Welcome back to the garage. Or if you're new to the channel and this is the first video of mine that you've seen, welcome to the garage. My name is Zane. In today's video, what do you say? The weather holds out enough for me to actually get a little bit of work done on this old wrecker, see if it will start up, run, and possibly even move under its own power. What do you think about that?
Well, we're waiting.
I don't normally stress this in the beginning of videos because I know it does aggravate some people. I mean, you haven't even watched the video yet. But if you do enjoy my videos, please give them a thumbs up. It actually helps me out a lot more here on YouTube than you would ever imagine. Also, check the video description below. There's other fantastic channels out there that are my friends. They've helped me out along the way. They put out great content, and I want to try to help them as best as I can as well. So go ahead and check the video description below. If you see some channels that you like, which I know you will, go ahead and hit subscribe and show them support. But anyways, I'm going to grab the toolbox, bring it down here, and get to work. Hopefully you can sit back, relax, and enjoy this video. Today it's 95 degrees, the sun's out, and it's incredibly muggy. There's a whole bunch of gnats that are flying around me right now. I hope they're not swarming in front of the lens too bad. I kind of feel like Pigpen from Peanuts, so I hope they're not going in front of the camera and ruining all these clips of video. But anytime you work on something that's been sitting for quite a while, it's always a good idea to check and see what the condition of it is. What do the wires look like? What do the belts look like? Is there oil in the engine? What about coolant? You want to make sure there's no vines in here, in the pulleys or anything of that nature. Now this truck has only sat for around 10 to 12 years. But it's still a good idea to go around and check all of the little items that you need to make sure that it's safe to even start up and run. The wiring in this truck isn't too awful bad. It doesn't look like any rodents have got in here and chewed up anything. Of course, the carburetor's missing. I'm going to borrow the one off of the Travelette that I bought the other day, more than likely. I think that will be my best bet for a carburetor. I've got one or two others. But anyhow, the hoses don't look too bad. Top and bottom radiator hoses. All the spark plug wires aren't chewed on. It's got good V-belts on it. Now, somebody mentioned before about swapping the roof onto the four-wheel drive truck. Why don't I just use the cab? Well, these Internationals rot out in the cowl area, and this one here is probably one of the worst ones that I've seen in Missouri. I mean, this thing is actually separating. The floorboards are rusted out. Basically, the only good panel on this truck is the roof. So that's why I'm not using this cab entirely. But anyhow, we'll get in here. Look underneath the dash. Has to be expected from an old truck like this. You can see that somebody's got in here and chopped the wiring up pretty bad, but I think we might be able to try to use the old stuff in here to start this truck. It's got one of these fancy combination ignitions. I think you turn it, let's see if this works. You turn it 2 to the left and 1 to the right. Cross your fingers. Let's see if it'll start up and run. Whoa, it was that simple. I can't believe it. No, but anyhow, the ignition's popped apart. The contacts don't look too bad. All the wires are still hooked up. They don't look chewed on. I think I can pull the front part of this ignition off and press it together. Maybe get a C-clamp out here and just see if it'll start up and run. But let's go ahead and check a few other items out before we get too carried away. First of which, let's get in here, check the engine oil. Actually don't look too awful bad. Smells like oil, doesn't smell like gas. Let me wipe this off. We'll go put it back down in the pan, see what it brings up. There's probably going to be a lot of cars going by in the background and my neighbor's dog's barking, so I apologize for that in advance. Yeah, the oil really doesn't look too bad in this engine, so that's at least one good sign. Now let's check the coolant. Now, of course, no spoilers for you all. I mean, I did check this stuff before I bought the truck, so pop the cap off. You can see the coolant. I'm kind of standing in the light, but you can see the green coolant in here. It's just a little bit low, nothing to worry about. But that radiator and coolant is good to run on this old engine. I don't believe, and I'm really hoping, that I have any kind of a problem with the carburetor. Hopefully I can get this ignition popped back together, because I think, like I said, that's the only thing really holding me back. Huh. Made in the USA. Must have been the original ignition in this old truck. I'll get some sandpaper, some emery cloth, and clean these contact points up, and I think I can pop this back together. They don't crimp them very well from the factory, even the new ones that you buy, so hopefully I can get it back together and we'll try it. I don't really know how well you can see. I don't want to unhook this ignition because the wires behind it do look pretty brittle, so I'm going to try to do it on the truck. But I've got some sandpaper. I'm going to clean up these contacts, get them shiny as I can. Now, I don't need to get too crazy because this might not actually work. This ignition might be bad, and that might be the reason why it was popped apart. Somebody was going to change it and just never did. I got those cleaned up pretty well. The ones on the inside don't look too bad. I might touch them up just a little bit, and then I'll see if I can pop this back together. See if the key goes back in here now. It does go like it's supposed to. It's got on, start. I think it'll be okay. This wire back here is unhooked, but it doesn't look like it appears to go to anything, so fingers crossed this wiring actually works. I think I might grab a battery, put it on the truck, and see if the ignition will even activate the starter or not. So I've got to really make another trip to my battery guy, because every time I need to do anything with any of these projects that aren't up and running, I have to rob the battery out of my forklift here. So I feel sorry for this thing. It started out, couldn't tell you how many projects around here, mainly the yellow truck. It would be incredibly awesome to put this battery in here, hook the negative and positive cable up, and see if it actually activates the starter. But you know as well as I do that there's probably not a chance at all that that's going to work. But you never know with an old project like this. Like I said, the wiring doesn't appear to be in too bad of shape. It's always a good shot to just go ahead and try it and see what happens. Who out there is surprised that it doesn't do anything? I sure am not. It was worth a try. I think I can jump the solenoid out there whenever I put the carburetor on it, so I guess we'll have to go that route. Okay, now that I've got myself squeezed in the engine bay, I'm going to take this screwdriver, jump across the starter, and see if it will actually engage. Now, I'm not trying to start the truck, I just want to see if the starter will work. Obviously the truck wouldn't start because I haven't put a carburetor on it yet and there's no fuel going to it. But here's a good chance for me to make a point to you all watching right now, is to always make sure that transmission is in neutral. 9 times out of 10, if you're working on an old truck like this or an old car, it's probably going to be a standard. If I had it in gear, it could still lurch forward with the starter hitting the flywheel, and it might run my foot over or cause some other kind of damage. So always make sure the transmission is in neutral, or if you got an automatic, put it in park. I've also got the wheels chalked on this truck, so I'm going to take the screwdriver, jump across this starter, and hopefully something happens. Oh, good sign right there. I think this truck will start up and run. Well, so much for the screwdriver. I was messing around with the ignition and I noticed how this one was unplugged earlier. I messed around with some of the different ports on this. I think that's going to work. I think the ignition will actually start this truck and turn it over, which will be a lot nicer since I won't have to be out there. I can be in here hitting the throttle pedal, getting fuel to it, and maybe even drive it. So fingers crossed this thing might actually make a trip down in the field. So I've established that the engine will turn over. So before I go and try to put a carburetor on here, you can see there's old duct tape that's on here. I'm going to hold down, I'm going to use compressed air and clean off the top of this engine. That way it makes it a little bit more easier. I don't have to worry about anything falling down inside. I'll also do that on the Travelette that I'm going to rob the carburetor off of for the time being. I'm up in front of my house by the road, which is fairly busy, so if the road noise gets bad, I do apologize. There's basically nothing I can do about it. I've tried to rehearse this and do this shot numerous times and cars keep driving by. But for those of you that are new to the channel or possibly missed the video on this truck, it's my 1968 International Travelette. My dad had this truck and sold it over 25 years ago, thinking that he would never see it again, until I randomly run across it in a farmer's field and I was lucky enough to buy it back. Now this truck, I plan on doing a lot of videos on this very soon. I want to get a few things squared away first, but it's 4-wheel drive, it's a 4-door short bed. It's sitting on 40-inch military Gamma Goat wheels and tires with custom wheel adapters to go to the International bolt pattern. This truck had a 304 V8 from the factory, but it's now sporting a low mileage 345 out of a Loadstar. So for the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and borrow the carburetor off of this truck to see if the wrecker will start up and run. You can see the camper in the background. I've had quite a few people wondering when I'm going to do an update video. I plan on doing one very soon. I'm sorry to put it off for so long, but my parents have been working on and off every other weekend to try to make some progress. They have made some, and in the next week or two I plan on trying to do an update video on that. But anyhow, I'm going to take compressed air, clean off the top of this engine as well, so I don't have to worry about anything falling down into the intake. I know you would think it would be easier to do a first start on this truck before I pulled the carburetor off of it. I completely understand that, but the fact of the matter is I was told by the previous owner this engine is actually stuck in this truck, so it'd take a lot more work to get this one running. So I'm going to borrow the carburetor off of it for the meantime. I hope that it's something simple is why this engine is stuck. I mean, I don't plan on keeping it in here. I was told that the flywheel, there was a problem with the flywheel being a different size. There are quite a few variants in the International flywheels, and that's why I was told this one doesn't start, because the flywheel actually does hit on the bell housing. Who knows? I imagine that is the case. The guy that sold this to me seemed fairly honest, so I'm going to take his word for it. I went ahead and removed the gasket that goes in between the intake and the carburetor. I'm going to use it on that truck, but I need to fill the ports on this engine so nothing gets down inside, especially mud daubers around where I live. And I'm going to go ahead and cover up the bolt holes, the threads that go into this intake as well. Time for me to implement another trick that my dad has taught me over the years. If you're going to take one of these carburetors apart, it's a good idea to soak it first. That's not going to make all of your problems go away. It's not going to make all the debris come out of the carburetor or anything like that. But if you've messed around with these before, or maybe you're new, as soon as you take these apart with the carburetor being dry and the gaskets being dry, 9 times out of 10, you're going to tear one. And then you'll probably have the misfortune of getting it all put back together nicely and all the debris out of it. Then whenever you go to start the engine, this carburetor's going to leak gas everywhere. It's very infuriating. So it's a good idea to soak the carburetor in a bucket of gas like I've got here. That way the gaskets get a little bit more pliable and you won't have to worry about ripping them as badly. I'm going to let that soak for about an hour. I got to run down, grab some lunch, and then whenever I get back, I'll go ahead and pull this apart, and we'll see how nasty it is inside. The carburetor I've had soaking in that 5-gallon bucket of gas for around an hour to an hour and a half. It cleaned it up visually a little bit, so I'm going to pull it apart, check and see what it looks like inside. I'm sure it's pretty dirty. But I went and grabbed lunch. I also was lucky enough to get on YouTube and just catch a premiere of a buddy of mine's video that he just put out. That's Mike over at Not For Hire. He done a video hauling dirt in the S-Series International dump truck that he picked up a while back. He's got a fantastic channel out there. He'll be linked in the video description below. Go ahead and check him out. But not only Mike at Not For Hire, but go ahead and check out Jason over at C.V Customs. Jason's into internationals just like I am as well. He's got quite a few of them. He runs his own business where he works on customers' vehicles as well as his own. He's got a soft spot for internationals. Go ahead and check both of those channels out as well as the other ones that are listed with them. If you like what you see, go ahead and subscribe. But let's see what this looks like on the inside. Well, you can see a good amount of debris on that. That definitely needed cleaned up. Looks like mud. I called the local parts store with the number off of the carburetor, and lo and behold, they don't have a carburetor kit for it. I mean, I completely understand them not keeping a lot of that stuff in stock. There's probably not a huge demand for them anymore. But I only tore the one gasket on this block. I didn't tear the bottom one, so I can put that back together at least for right now. But when I bought the truck, the previous owner was nice enough to throw in the monstrosity carburetor that came off of here. So if I'm lucky enough, I might be able to salvage the gasket out of here, or at least take this part of the carburetor off of this one and put it on this. This one's pretty nasty inside, and it's actually froze up, so let me see if I can Frankenstein something together.
I can order it for you, have it in a couple of weeks.
Well, ain't this place a geographical oddity? 2 weeks from everywhere.
I put all the new gaskets in here. I also took the choke plate off of the one that came with the wrecker and switched it out with the one that's on here. I'll show you what happened. The little screws that hold the choke plate onto the rod stripped out, so I took my air saw and I cut them, got them out of the way, put the one off of the wrecker, the one that came with the wrecker, on this carburetor. It's pretty miserable out here. There's not much ventilation in the garage. It's 95 degrees. I may or may not have had to go in the house and change my shirt so I wasn't sweaty all over the camera. But anyhow, I think it's time to take this down there to the truck, clean the intake up a little bit, and get it bolted down. Well, it's been a few days since I got the carburetor bolted back onto the intake. Now I need to find something to use as a fuel tank, just temporarily, to run into that carburetor with all them new gaskets. I don't want to run a line from the pump and the tank on this truck because it's been sitting for quite a few years, and Lord knows what's inside of it. I'm sure there's all kinds of debris from its setting. I got a lot of flack for using one of these on a video in the past on my yellow F600 just to move it around the place. This is a Dorman 603-001 coolant reservoir tank. Now I know what you're thinking, it's a coolant tank. The gas is just going to eat it up and make this thing swell up and crack. But I've had the one on my yellow F600 for around a year now. It looks exactly the same whenever I bought it. This one worked fantastic, so I'm going to use it on this truck as well. Now I've got a few lawnmower fuel tanks, but I've got them currently tied up on other projects. I don't want to have to pull one of them off just to see if this truck will run. So I'm going to get this one set up on the truck and gravity feed into the carburetor, and we'll see how it works. I almost messed up and tried to start this without cleaning the points on the engine, so probably wouldn't have run. Let me pop this distributor cap off of here and clean these contacts up a little bit. They don't look too terrible, but I'll go ahead and touch them up. You want to make sure the points are pretty shiny on here, or you won't get a good spark. You don't typically have to get too crazy. You want to make sure all of the surfaces are shiny. The next order of business is to check and see if this engine has spark. The coil is grounded in a good spot. All the spark plug wires are in good shape. I popped one of them off down here, and I've got it very close to the spark plug itself. I'm going to bump the starter and see if we got spark. You can see it sparking right down in this area, very faint. But this engine has a good spark, and I think it'll start up and run. Alright, so let's go over the checklist for this old wrecker. Now, I borrowed the carburetor off the green International Travelette. I completely rebuilt it with all new gaskets. I got it bolted on the intake on this engine. I put the ignition back together. I checked for spark. I cleaned the points on the engine. There's not much holding this back. The only thing left to do is to throw a battery back in here, put a little bit of gas in this gas can, and see if the old truck will fire up and run. Hold up, wait a minute. Wait a minute, who are you? Who am I? Who am I? I'm your worst nightmare. Okay, that's a very odd thing to say to somebody, but can I help you with something? Well, I don't know. Can you? No, I mean, but seriously, why are you actually here on my property? That's kind of weird, bro. I'm just here to say that I cannot believe that you are starting this truck with that old oil in this engine. Well, I mean, to be completely honest with you, I did plan on using the old oil in this engine. I mean, it didn't look too bad. I never heard this engine run before. It could just start up and start rod knocking right off the bat. I mean, buying new oil and a filter seems like it'd be a huge waste of money, in my opinion. Well, you know what? It's actually pretty funny that you brought that up. My brother's daughter's boyfriend has a cousin, and that cousin has another cousin. He bought a truck that was sitting in a field. He started with the old engine oil, and it completely spontaneously combusted and burned to the ground in less than 5 seconds flat. Whoa, no joke. I mean, it's actually pretty crazy. Were you there and seen that happen yourself? Well, I mean, I wasn't there that day. I was supposed to help him get the truck running, but at the same time, it turns out I'm actually almost too good at getting vehicles running, so I didn't want to show up there, do a good job, and make him feel bad about himself. So he told me that's what happened, and I just about believe anything that anybody tells me. Oh, okay. Okay, you're one of those people that actually will believe just about anything. So anyways, okay, I appreciate you trying to help or whatever you're doing, but I'm just going to go ahead and start this engine up with the old oil in it. If it does run, I'll go and get a new filter and put new oil in it. Oh, okay. I understand how this is going. If I don't do exactly as you say, you're going to give the video a thumbs down, aren't you? I don't know. Maybe. All right. I kind of understand this one time. I'll give you credit, just a little bit of credit, because it is a halfway decent idea. So I'm going to run down to the parts store, get a new oil filter and oil for this engine before I try to start it. All right, let's see how nasty the oil is that's in this engine. It doesn't look too bad from the dipstick, but you never know what could be hiding in the bottom of this oil pan. Hopefully not shavings. It looks like the oil pan drain is just enough to where it's going to splash on this axle and probably get all over the place. So well, it doesn't look terrible, luckily. No water in the bottom of it, so this thing might be in halfway decent shape still. This filter might not know, but it is way too hot to be nice. Can hardly find a place to swing the hammer down here. Wrong way, smart guy. And let's dump the punch into the oil. Great idea. Oh, you're kidding me. I probably broke the filter at the top or something. Let's see if I can cut my hand on the filter. Okay, somebody was kind enough, as you could guess, to put this filter on, it looks like, without ever putting a drop of oil on the rubber gasket. You know, this is the part of the video where I have to say, I really admire how easy it is for GM lovers to go and buy parts at a parts store. I had to wait almost 2 days for an oil filter for this engine. It's pretty amazing. I mean, you can almost practically walk into Walmart and get parts for a small block Chevy on the shelf. So it's kind of a pain to have something that's a little bit more obscure, but luckily they did find me one. And in my infinite wisdom, when I ordered the carburetor kit for this carburetor and waited almost 5 days for it to be shipped to me, I didn't even think about looking for an oil filter, so I had to rely on the parts store. But anyhow, I got some HPDG brand oil to throw in this engine, and we'll go from there. Okay, so the carburetor's on the truck. The fuel system is hooked up. The wires seem like they're in good shape. The only thing left to do is to put fuel in the gas tank and see if this truck will fire up. Oh, come on,
bro,
not
are
you
you
again.
serious,
bro? You didn't even show the footage of you putting the oil filter on. I'm giving this video a thumbs down. Yeah, well, I mean, at least I can say that I tried to do it the nice way the first time. Okay, sorry for the interruption. Sometimes you have to take care of business. But anyways, let me go get some fuel, and now we'll see if this truck will start up and run. Well, here goes nothing. Truck actually started up real easy. I'm actually pleasantly surprised at how well this old truck runs. I didn't have to adjust the carburetor at all. I kind of put the settings back to where I thought they went. It starts up, doesn't leak gas. Sounds pretty good. It's probably one of the only old trucks I've ever bought that has exhaust on it that looks practically brand new. Now, just because the truck runs doesn't mean that I should take it down in the field for a test drive. But I'm still gonna. Okay, so the truck runs and drives, moves under its own power. It's pretty miserable hot out right now. I got the truck backed into a nice shady spot in the field, so I'm gonna try to make this short and sweet. I wanted to say that the YouTube expert bit is not aimed at anybody in the comment section in particular. It's just the fact that if you get on YouTube and look at videos that people put out, it seems like somebody's always being ignorant down in the comment section. Now, I am extremely lucky for the kind commenters and the kind subscribers that I have. I greatly appreciate you all taking the time out of your day to watch my videos. It really means a lot. All the helpful tips and tricks for these projects is greatly appreciated. I hope the YouTube expert was kind of a funny bit. I put it together, and then when I edited it, I didn't really think it was that funny. I still left it in the video. Hopefully you got a laugh. But anyway, the truck runs and drives. It jumps out of gear, except for whenever the throttle happened to stick wide open on it. It didn't jump out of gear then. Go figure, the one time I need it to jump out of gear to help me out a little bit, and it doesn't do that. So I had to push the clutch in and grab the emergency brake, but I got it stopped. No harm, no foul. But anyways, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment or a question down below. Consider subscribing if this is the kind of content that you're into. And as always, just a friendly reminder that it doesn't matter if you're working on your project in a garage or in your driveway. What matters is that you go out there, you do the job yourself, and you learn more about your project, whatever that project may be. Now that this video's over and the weather's not too miserable, maybe you can find a shade tree, how about you go outside and work on something? My name is Zane, and I'll catch you next time.